How many times have you heard experiences from individuals and families who are struggling with the challenges of aging, caregiving, the unknowns of health, loneliness, financial worry, and just general overwhelm? I spent 10 years working in the aging sector, hearing these same stories of struggle over and over again. And at the root of it all, no one is teaching us how to plan for aging from a holistic perspective. So welcome to the Ageucation Podcast. This is where you will get the aging education you didn't know you needed. My name is Jess Davis. If you are in your 60s or 70s, or you have parents in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, you are in the right place, my friend. We are all aging. We all want to maintain our autonomy and independence as we age. So let's intentionally prepare our families for the needs of our eldest years. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ageucation Podcast. I've got another story for you today. I'm just going to dive right into it. This is my last story was a recent one. This one actually wasn't too far back either. I had a client last year who was 65 years old and had just retired. He lives with his wife, who is about 12 years younger than him, if I remember correctly. And he was the type of guy who was very organized in his files and documentation and thought about all the possibilities and options, etc., etc. So when I met with him and told him about my business and how I serve people through age planning, he was so intrigued and immediately wanted to work with me and have a conversation with me. And when I sat down with him for the first time, it was just him and I in the conversation. He wanted to flesh some things out in his own mind before bringing his wife into the conversation, which he had also identified his wife as not being overly open to conversations about his age planning and end of life planning and that kind of thing. She was more in the mindset of we'll deal with it when it happens and not a moment sooner. So when we started chatting about things, he had already done quite a bit of age planning himself. He was well-versed and very prepared in his finances and a will and estate plan, and he had purpose and a mission for his retirement years with his hobby farm. But the more we talked about planning physically for aging with health conditions and concerns, or planning environmentally for aging with how he functions in his home and community, or mentally with possibility of cognitive decline, etc., etc., everything we were talking about, I noticed he was operating under the assumption that his aging needs and challenges would always develop before his wife's would because of their age gap, the 12-year age gap. Or he was assuming that his wife would always be there and be able-bodied and have the capacity to care for his needs. Everything he was talking about hinged on that. And at the end of that first session, I said to him, how does it make you feel to know that your wife is there to support your needs as you age? And he said it was very comforting to know that he wanted to have deeper and more expansive discussions with her about aging and what their future might look like, but overall that he was just very grateful to have someone willing and there to care for him. So then my next question, I told him my next question is coming from a very caring and intentional place, because I wanted him to see the full picture of possibilities. But I said, have you ever considered how your aging needs will be met if you do not have your wife to care for you, or she is unable to care for you? And he looked at me with a blank face for a second And I think he was processing that no, he had in fact never thought of that possibility, because he was always operating under the thought that she is 12 years younger than me and I will have all the aging challenges 12 years ahead of her. And he said, she is very healthy and active, and I hadn't considered the possibility of her not being here. And he continued to process that and said, but you're right, as much as I don't want to think about it, she could get in a car accident or have a stroke, be diagnosed with cancer, etc., etc. And my goal here is never to move people into an unending rabbit hole of what ifs, because that is a rabbit hole of possibilities that goes on forever and feels very heavy. But my goal is to ensure that individuals or families are not stuck in planning on a one-track mindset, believing that everything they plan for is exactly as it will be. Because we have to realize and be open to the ever-flowing changes of life. There is a way to plan for aging and open up the proactive conversations around aging that still allows breathing room for the ebbs and flows of life. But we can't plan with rigidity and expect to rely on one path, planning out exactly and thinking that that's exactly how it's going to go. So I left that conversation with him and told him that I wanted him to just simmer on that thought, that all his planning was hinging on the single belief that his wife would be available and capable of caring for him or navigating with him as he aged. That is what our conversation had been that whole session. And I could tell he took that to heart and he understood what I was trying to show him and make him kind of process through, which I was thankful for, because I never want to upset people in these conversations. But this is life, right? If you aren't talking about the inevitability of our life cycle and death, then I don't think you're truly living, because by actively acknowledging and contemplating death, you are able to more fully engage with life. Or I heard someone put it once, something like, considering your mortality can make you value life more deeply. So anyways, the next time I met with this gentleman, he was so eager to dive back into the thought that I had left him with. And he wanted his wife to sit in on our conversation this time, because she had kind of come around to talking about it. He had actually shared with her one of the frameworks I created called Aging Conversations. And upon them reflecting on that together, it spurred them into a shared emotion of fear. They both realized that they were more afraid of having to navigate their aging needs alone in the future than they were of openly talking about it now. I want to say that again. They realized that they were more fearful of having to navigate the changes and challenges of aging alone if one of them were to not be there. They were more afraid of that than they were of openly talking about the conversation of aging and death now. And that was a pivotal realization for them, because it brought them together and on the same page again. They bonded over that fear of accepting that they could potentially lose one another and have to navigate all of this without the other person. And that terrified both of them. So they used that fear to kickstart themselves into proactive conversations together. And they told me they were actually gaining comfort and a sense of calm for these conversations and for their future, just based on the fact that they were able to do it together and do it now. So they don't have to wonder what each other's answers will be when they have to ask the tough questions in the hard moments or in the crisis situations in the future. They don't have to wonder anymore. So they are both in the motions of proactively and holistically age planning now, which is exciting. And they're doing it together, and they're doing it as a family. They're actually looping their kids in on the conversations when they think it's necessary or when they're comfortable doing so. What else do I want to say about this? Oh, I want to circle back for a minute on the aging conversations framework that I just mentioned, because that is one of 3 frameworks that I created and that I expand and explain in my mini course called the Ageucation Mini-Course. So I'm going to leave the link for that in the show notes because it's a really great starting point, or like a first step into understanding age planning and how I teach age planning to my clients. But that's all I'm gonna say for today, share for today. I would encourage you, again, go back and listen to this episode again, because it's 10 minutes of like really packed in. This was the situation and what they were going through and kind of how they handled it. It's a lot of information that I pack into 10 minutes. So I would just encourage you to go back and listen to it again, and really process through it all and pick up all of the things that I talk about. And otherwise, I will catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ageucation Podcast. I have 3 reminders before you go. Number 1, go check out the show notes for any resources or links that I mentioned in this episode that may have piqued your interest. Number 2, please share this episode with a friend whom you think it would bless, because in order for more families to benefit from my age planning resources, I need listeners like you to spread the word. And number 3, I would love to hear from you. Email me with your thoughts on this episode or suggest a topic you'd like to hear on a future episode. Find my email in the show notes. And remember, we're all aging. Aging is the same as living, and it is a privilege to live and to age.